A special edition of RamView? Man, how fun is that? This is RamView. Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView, the August 29th, 2023 special edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident, need help, got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. So, stuff is happening. Players are getting cut all over the place. We got a Stafford non-story. We've got week 8 that we're reviewing. And the Rams right now don't have a kicker. So many things to talk about. But let's just get right to the top of it real quick. Last look at the Broncos-Rams on Saturday. 22 players took defensive snaps for the Rams. As of right now, I got to double check. But of those 22 defensive players that took snaps for the Rams, 18 of them have been cut, as with today's round of cuts. 18 of them. That's why you lose 41-0 in the preseason, because you started guys who aren't going to be in the NFL. And so I just wanted to throw that out there before we get into the nitty-gritty here. Also, here's one that reeked of desperate dead period material. Kelly Stafford, is it Kelly Stafford? Matthew Stafford's wife talked about how her husband can't seem to connect with the younger guys because they just put on their headphones and go, and they don't really do any, time to get to know them. And everyone's making this a big deal. Stafford lost the locker room. Stafford did this. Can I just tell you something? Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback with the Super Bowl ring and literally threw the greatest pass in NFL history. Matthew Stafford does not need to adjust to anybody. They need to adjust to him. And they say, well, Tom Brady got to know us too. Tom Brady never showed up at camp with 40 rookies coming in, right? They run those guys in, they run them out. They run them in and out Kansas City. They just keep moving them in and out. And you know who you don't have to accommodate? You don't have to accommodate the new receivers coming in or the young receivers coming in. You ask, Matthew, are you happy? Can I get you something to drink? You feel good right now because you're a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback with a Super Bowl ring, and you threw the greatest, most iconic pass in NFL history. And if it is not the most iconic pass in NFL and Super Bowl history, it is because it's bias against Matthew Stafford and the Rams, okay? Matthew Stafford is just fine. If the young players can't connect with Matthew Stafford, send them to Houston. Send them to Baltimore, send them to Cleveland, send them to Green Bay, send them to Chicago. Heck, really punish them and send them to Arizona. But Matthew Stafford doesn't have to accommodate for anybody. Major non-story. Last announcement on their last statement on the Trey Lance deal. Everyone's getting all worked up, trying to make it something more than it is. I understand we're 8 days away, 9 days away from the season starting, and you need more material. Trey Lance going to the Cowboys, or the Cowboys making the move for Trey Lance, to me is the equivalent of a house flip. I've got these friends of mine who know how to do plumbing. They know how to do electrical. They know how to rebuild a house, right? To remodel a house from top to bottom, right? And they buy these deals for $100,000, $200,000, and then they flip that house for $500 or $600. They use their whole careers. This is what they did. This is what the Cowboys are doing with Trey Lance, right? Now, I don't think Dak Prescott is that good. I don't think he's that great. But you bring him in, Trey Lance, and if Trey Lance develops in a couple of years, okay, you got something. But better still, if Trey Lance just comes out and plays 1 game, 2 games where he just lights it up, right? He just lights it up. You could probably flip him for a 3rd rounder, maybe even a 2nd rounder if people go back to thinking, wow, this guy's got potential. It's an interesting story. I wouldn't call Trey Lance an absolute bust just yet, but I would say he was a bust for the 49ers. And so anyway, that's where we're at there. All right. Around the NFL, cuts and transactions. Last note on the Cardinals releasing Colt McCoy. They're going to go with either Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune. It is still, I'll say it again, a curse to go to the Cardinals. Caleb Williams I don't think he should say anything right now. I think when USC plays out the season in January, he should just say, yeah, I'm not playing in Arizona. I'd be happy to play for USC. I said this yesterday. I'm going to say it again. He's got a little leverage. Maybe not a whole lot, but he has another year of eligibility in school, and he is getting NIL money. They can take an insurance policy out on him, but he doesn't need to go to the Arizona Cardinals. And I get sick of hearing how people are saying, oh, the Arizona Cardinals are doing it right now. They're just tanking, and they're all set up for the future. Really? It's the Arizona Cardinals. You can change the general manager, you can change the head coach, but you still got the same owners there, right? You still got the same owners who can never piece together any consistent stretch. They get an older quarterback. He catches fire at just the right time because there was a couple of good receivers there, Anquan Bolton, and that other guy, Fitzgerald, right? He catches fire at just the right time, and they have a nice 2-year run, and then that window collapses. Carson Palmer comes in, does the same thing, and then that window collapses. Caleb Williams should not go to Arizona, and I just wouldn't. It's a cursed place. All right. Other NFL news, Lions cut Adrian Martinez, the former Nebraska quarterback, who I think, where did he go last year? He transferred someplace else last year. Adrian Martinez, I can't even believe he lasted this long. That guy must have been in college longer than Stetson Bennett. It seemed like he was in his 10th year at Nebraska there for a while. Cole Beasley got cut by the Giants. It was interesting to see him come back. The Chargers cut Keelan Doss. Now, Keelan Doss, a few years ago, you might remember, was the Raiders' version of Nelson Spruce. He was the heartthrob, the one everyone was passionate for when they did their, was it 2019? Was it 2019, 2018? I think it was 2019 Hard Knocks that Antonio Brown kind of submarined. But Keelan Doss keeps getting cut, and the Chargers put him in the street, along with quarterback Max Duggan. The Eagles did something smart. They signed cornerback Isaiah Rodgers. Isaiah Rodgers is the former Colts quarterback who got busted for gambling, suspended indefinitely by the NFL. Colts released him. Eagles took a flyer on him, and I bet it's real, real cheap. Those of us that are in Southern California might remember the name Kevon Seymour, Muir High School, USC. He was released by the Baltimore Ravens. Those of us in Southern California might remember a fellow named Sidney Jones, played for West Covina, spent some time in Philly and Seattle. He was cut by the Bengals. The Texans cut Jake Fromm, and since we're talking about defensive backs, they also cut former Ram safety Terrell Burgess. Interesting one here, the Packers signed Rams long snapper Matt Orzech during this offseason, and the Rams been searching for a new long snapper. They got Alex Ward. Orzech played really well for the Rams, but the Packers put him in the street today. The Jaguars cut Chandler Brewer, former Ram, and also they had brought Bobby Evans in for a cup of coffee. Only thing I could think of is that whoever is in Jacksonville that made this decision said, you know what do the Rams know? They don't know anything, and we don't have to watch the tape. And Minnesota doesn't know anything. Let's bring him in for a cup of coffee. And now Jacksonville knows, you don't bring in Bobby Evans. The Buccaneers cut John Wolford. And that might be the end. The Wolf might go back to Wall Street. It looks like he's done. Bills put former Ram Von Miller on the PUP list. He'll miss the first month of the season. Panthers did the same with Austin Corbett, former Ram offensive lineman on the Super Bowl team. All right, Ram news. This is the biggies today. This will be a short show, folks. So we're just going to get to the Ram cuts. As expected, they put Brett Rippon and Dresser Wynn in the street. Now, with all these cuts, and I know that they are going to bring back these guys if they make it through. They are going to bring back some of these guys on the practice squad. So it might not be the long goodbye. It's a temporary Auf Wiedersehen. So think about that as we mention the names. They put Brett Rippon and Dresser Wynn in the street, and they let go of Royce Freeman as we expected. They cut Austin Trammell and Xavier Smith this morning. And then later today, they put Tyler Johnson. It looked like Tyler Johnson had made the team. It looked like the Rams were going to go with 7 receivers, and they put Tyler Johnson in the street. They released him. So the Rams wide receiver room as of now. And all this is temporary because everyone's going to be scrambling and making moves. And I still think the Rams cut kicker Tanner Brown. They don't have one on the roster. I think they're at 53 guys right now. So someone else is going to get the boot. Probably not from the wide receiver room. The Rams have 6 wide receivers: Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, Ben Skoranek, Demarcus Robinson, and, of course, Puka Nacua. That looks like a strong receiving room. The Rams put Nikola Kalinick out in the street. They put Cameron McDonald yesterday in the street. They put Christian Sims in the street, although I think Christian Sims definitely could be a practice squad player. And they're going 4 tight ends: Higbee, Hopkins, Davis Allen, and Hunter Long. I would not have put Hunter Long on this roster. I'd have found a pup list to put him on. I'd have found an IR to put him on. I don't like it. I don't like the 4. Chris McVay is going to say, "Man, he's scared. Joe doesn't like it." I don't know. I know they got a passion for Hunter Long because they scouted him earlier, but at the expense of maybe another player on the roster, I'd have IR'd Hunter Long. The guy hasn't played all summer. And the guy's got 2 targets in his whole career. Anyway, I digress. Offensive line, the Rams put A.J. Akuri, Mike McAllister, Grant Miller on the street, along with Sean McGinn yesterday. Those guys were released this afternoon. Logan Bruss was put in the street, and I think Logan Bruss is the guy that's not ready to play. I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him brought back on the practice squad. And everyone's calling him Logan Bust. I don't think so. I think it's taking him time to go back to a new position in the NFL. He might have played it in college, and then just still recovering from that knee injury. This gives the Rams 10 offensive linemen that are on the roster: Brian Allen, Coleman Shelton, Steve Avila, Kevin Dotson, Tremaine Ankrum, Rob Havenstein, Alaric Jackson, Joe Noteboom, Warren McClendon, and surprisingly, on that list also is Zach Thomas. I have not seen anything on Zach Thomas being released today. All right. On the defensive side, 7 defensive linemen: Aaron Donald, Bobby Brown, Kobe Turner, Jonah Williams, Ernest Brown IV, Laurel Murchison, DeJuan Johnson. The name that surprised me here was Marquise Copeland. I always thought the Rams valued him more than Jonah Williams. But you could tell something was up when Jonah Williams didn't play on Saturday and Marquise Copeland played something close to 40 snaps. Jonah Williams, the Rams have leaned towards him. He's light, unless he's put on some weight. Copeland played at about close to 290. Jonah Williams is playing at about 275, and that just feels really light for an interior defensive lineman. But we'll see. Mr. Irrelevant as of now, DeJuan Johnson is on the team, as is Laurel Murchison, who I'm not overly enthusiastic about. Ernest Brown is still with the team, and that one's kind of interesting because, again, does he pop? Rams this morning released Cameron McCutcheon, gone. It looked like they were going with 6 defensive backs or 6 cornerbacks. That seemed kind of high, and then news came that Robert Rochelle was put in the street. So the Rams are going Kobe Durant, Ahkello Witherspoon, Trey Tomlinson, Darian Kendrick, and Sean Jolly. Now, I understand. I can't make an argument. I've been honking for Robert Rochelle for close to 2 years now. I understand, he didn't look good. But did Sean Jolly look better? That's the one that kind of surprised me. Sean Jolly being on the roster did surprise me. And I guess, pick your poison, Rochelle or Sean Jolly. I thought the Rams would stick with Rochelle and put Jolly in the street, but did not happen. Linebackers, Ernest Jones, Christian Roseboom, Jake Hummel, hardly the scourge of the earth. Jaden Woodby and DeAndre Square were released. Again, I would keep an eye on Jaden Woodby returning to the practice squad. The Rams took a long look at him. The safety spot, Rams got 5 safeties, and really, these are the 5 safeties that I think everyone kind of expected. Yesterday the Rams released Tanner Ingle. Today they released Quindell Johnson, Rashad Torrance, the second or junior. There's so many adjectives on the end of these names. And they kept, obviously, Jordan Fuller, John Johnson III, Quentin Lake, Russ Yeast, and Jason Taylor II. Taylor's been a little banged up, but he was draft pick. It made sense. Quindell Johnson, again, another guy that I thought flashed well in preseason. I think they're hoping to tuck him away on the practice squad. Rams are going with five as of right now, five edge rushers. Michael Hoyt, Byron Young, Nick Hampton made the team, and I honestly thought Nick Hampton was in trouble. Then Oshwan Mathis, who hasn't played a snap, they kept him on the roster, and you wonder what's going to happen there between now and when season kicks off, because the Rams still need a kicker because they put Tanner Brown in the street. They're good with Evans. They're good with Ward as their special team guys. But the name that's really interesting on the edge is Zach Van Valkenburg. And that dude, he didn't have hardly any sacks during the preseason either, but he popped. You could see you knew who he was. It wasn't just because of his name. You knew who he was. He kept showing up, right? And, you keep showing up, your name keeps getting called, and good things can happen. And Zach Van Valkenburg, as of this moment, is on the Rams 53, along with Oshwan Mathis, Nick Hampton, Byron Young, and Michael Hoyt. That just feels thin. It feels thin because Kier Thomas, I thought he had a shot. I thought Daniel Hardy had a shot. And maybe there's really not many veterans left out there. Maybe the Rams have something cooking in terms of what they're thinking about an edge rusher. And maybe Joe Noteboom is trade bait for the Rams to use to pull in another edge rusher because Zach Thomas is still on the roster. Okay, this is a special edition of RamView. I usually don't go. Hello, I've been a Ram fan for 55 years. My first Rams game was in Philadelphia. Frank Corral kicked the winning field goal with 1 second on the clock. I met Jack Youngblood after the game. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's AM for watching. I'm just reading your comment here. Yeah, I've been a Rams fan forever. I actually was in high school. I saw that game. Frank Corral, the Rams running him out there as the clock's winding down, and he booted that field goal. Yeah, I remember that game. Hey, nice to meet you. Thank you for clicking on. I hope you can like and subscribe, but thank you also for joining us. That is awesome on this special day. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely remember that game in Philly because all the momentum in those days in 78 was Dick Vermeil. He was the young happening coach. Jaworski was developing. They had Wilbert Montgomery, and they were the developing team in the NFC East. The Eagles were fading. The Cardinals were fading, and they were the one that was going to challenge the Cowboys. And sure enough, they did get over the hump. With the 78 Eagles. Well, I think they got over the hump in 80, but they actually took a big stride there in 78. Awesome. So I'm Joe Terosian, a sports writer for 21 years. I still am, kind of, sort of. And I do RamView, and I write books. My books can be found on Amazon. I've written 2 high school football novels that have been well received. And I do RamView and write books to help pay for my day job. My day job is I pastor a small church in Burbank called Burbank Faith Nazarene. You could also find that on our Burbank Faith virtual channel right here on YouTube. Just type in Burbank Faith Virtual or my name. It should come up and you can join us there. But I get to do this thanks to my sponsors at Kistler Law and Temple City Auto and Granite Ridge. I am blessed and I love talking Ram football. And normally we're here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But this time of year with all the stuff happening, I felt it was important to get on today and to share some thoughts because I got sponsors who believe in me. Okay. All right. On this date, August 29th, 1973, Rams linebacker Marlon McKeever retires. McKeever had a heck of a journey in the NFL. Started off with the Rams. He played linebacker, and he played tight end, was actually a pretty successful tight end through the mid-60s. Got dealt away, came back to the Rams in the Ramskins trade with George Allen, along with all these draft picks. And Marlon McKeever, it's funny, George Allen, he doesn't really stick around with George Allen, and then after George Allen leaves, the Rams bring him back. George Allen must not have been a Marlon McKeever fan. Marlon and his brother Mike McKeever were legends at USC. And Marlon was the Rams' middle linebacker in 72. But by 73, Jack Reynolds had taken over. And late August 29th, 1973, McKeever retired. Now, I think it was a little later, a couple weeks later, he did have a brief cup of coffee with the Eagles, but it was over. And but on this day, Marlon McKeever retired. And there's actually a picture of him on Google Images of him in a blue and gold uniform from '73. And that was kind of a debate I had with some friends a few years ago. It's like, hey, he left after '72. I didn't realize he was with the Rams through Chuck Knox's first camp in '73. Interesting. Yeah. It's nerd spasm on my part. Like our friend AM, who's watching us right now. When you've been a fan for so long, you just have these nerd spasms. In 1986, on this date, the Rams released defensive backs Gary Green and Eric Harris. In '83, the Rams acquired Eric Harris from the Chiefs. And then in '84, they sent a #1 pick for Pro Bowler Gary Green. Gary Green, now Eric Harris was a competent defensive back who moved to safety, and he ended up hurting his back. Gary Green was a Pro Bowl corner who played from '77 through '85. And if he, lasted a little bit longer, maybe if the Rams picked off a Super Bowl appearance in there, I think he would be getting much more consideration because he was a top-notch corner at his time in the NFL. Green played corner for the Rams in '84. In '85, he was on the '85 team that lost to the Bears, but he developed, there was a bulge in his neck, a herniated disc, and in '86, the Rams waited, obviously. It was late in August. Both these guys, they never played in the NFL again, but they were really good defensive backs, really solid DBs. On this date, 1988, it's always been an interesting day for me. The Rams waived Steve Dills. And I was there that day. I was at Rams camp that day. I was in school and college, and I was working for a magazine, believe it or not. And I had to go interview another Ram player, and I passed by Steve Dills and Mike Gooman. Gooman had been put on IR, and when you go on IR back in '88, you're gone for the year. I think he ended up playing one game for the Rams that year. And Dills was released. And it was just, they had a real serious looks on their face. I'm the starry-eyed guy, my first time at an NFL camp, and I'm all impressed. And it was like, I noticed these guys weren't happy. And so I just kind of gave them a wide berth and then went on to my interview with the Rams player. But it was interesting. Steve Dills was waived on this day. I'll always appreciate Steve Dills, and I'll tell you why. This is why you appreciate Steve Dills. Rams lose with Dieter Brock to the Chicago Bears in the NFC title game in January of '86, right? And I think it was, 24-0? Just a brutal game. Brutal game. My friends who work at Mid-Valley Sports, they say it's because I didn't go to church that day. That's why the Rams lost. My brother would probably say the same thing. We had all kinds of weird things that we thought were jinxes in those days. And if you didn't go to church the day the Rams played, you were being a jinx. Anyway, nerd spasm. But that next year, during the '86 season, the Rams, if you remember, went to Chicago on a Monday night. And Chicago was having all kinds of quarterback problems, and the Rams weren't doing any better. Jim Everett was on the roster. They had made the trade, but Steve Dills was playing quarterback. I think he was something like 7 of 26 or 6 of 25, and he completed like 5 passes in the fourth quarter. One of them was a long bomb, and he engineered that team to where they won it on a Mike Lansford field goal. And so Steve Dills will always be in my cool book because he went into the valley of the shadow. That Bears defense was still intact in '86, and he brought the Rams the victory that Dieter Brock couldn't. And of course, the stakes were higher in the NFC Championship game, but that was a very good moment. But it was interesting also on the day that Steve Dills was released, the Rams had Ross Browner in camp, the former Notre Dame standout, the brother of Joey Browner, who should be a Hall of Fame safety with the Vikings, and Keith Browner, who played at USC, was a 30th overall choice in the '83 draft by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he had a couple of good years there. But Ross Browner, I didn't realize he was with the Rams in camp in '88. Rams released him. He retired. His career was over. He had a very so-so NFL career. He didn't have the big standout like he was in college, but I didn't realize he was in camp. 1995, on this day, the Rams released Fred Stokes. And on this day in 2017, the Rams' Eric Dickerson signed a one-day contract to retire officially as a Rams. Okay, AM, you sent me a note. I'm going to answer your questions, guys. Do I remember Todd Kitchen who hit the goalpost after scoring a touchdown in San Fran? Yeah, I do remember that. I didn't see the game live. I think the Rams, what did they start that year? 3-1, 4-1, their first year in St. Louis. It was in Busch Stadium, and Todd Kitchen's hitting it, and I think he just set off the 49ers, and I think didn't Ken Norton get a pick six or a scoop and score, and he did the same thing? Yeah, those Rich Brooks teams, man, that was brutal. That was a very hard period for Ram fans. I tried to disown them, and I couldn't. I remained a Ram fan through all that pain. Great. Yeah, I do remember that moment. Do not bring up Super Bowl 14. I don't want to blow the show here and really lose my rage. Okay, we're at week 8 as we're going through the season and looking at the offenses the Rams are going to face. Right now, I had the Rams getting crushed and losing to the Steelers last week. I have the Rams at 3-4. As we go into week 8, Rams are going to Dallas. They're playing the Cowboys. It's October 29th. And they are going to face the Cowboys team. Now, my issue with this is not so much the Cowboys offense. I think the Cowboys offense is overblown. I do think they're going to hurt because they lost their OC. I do not think that Dak Prescott is any really high caliber quarterback. And they've made some changes. Their defense is spectacular. Their defense is pretty good, although I'm not so much of a Trevon Diggs guy. I do think Trevon Diggs is vulnerable. He's got a lot of Janoris Jenkins in him. He's a big playmaker, but he gets burned a lot. It's a lot of heaven and hell with him. He graded 42 out of 118 cornerbacks last year, and he got the monster contract. They did bring in Stephon Gilmore from the Colts. The question there is, can Gilmore, who's 33, repeat the kind of year he had in Indy? And he was the 9th rated corner last year, and that'll be interesting to see. And so I do respect the Cowboys defense, but when I look at their offense, love their offensive line. Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, they're solid at center. Tyrone Smith, if he's healthy, right? The former USC guy. That's really good. I'm sorry, I'm just not a big CeeDee Lamb guy. CeeDee Lamb does not scare me. Brandon Cooks, I saw him with the Rams. He's good, but okay. Michael Gallup, yeah, okay. They let Dalton Schultz go, and they got Jake Ferguson. They drafted Luke Schoonmaker, and they got Peyton Hendershot. It's solid. And then at running back, they got Tony Pollard, who he doesn't have anyone really to share the load with him. Ronald Jones, the former USC, the former Buccaneer, the former Chief guy is there, as well as their August heartthrob, Deuce Vaughn. And then, of course, Dak Prescott's at quarterback. Actually, Cooper Rush scares me a little more than Dak Prescott because I think Prescott is prone to the mistake. And it's not just interceptions. He's just prone to the mistake where Cooper Rush, less talent, has to play more by the numbers. And if you play just a disciplined game against the Rams defense with Raheem Morris's scheme that so far has not shown any ability to adapt, and we're still running out the 2021 defensive scheme out there that teams have adjusted to. That's, again, I know I say like a broken record, that's how you get chewed up by Colt McCoy and Andy Dalton and guys like Cooper Rush because the receivers have 8 to 10 yards and no one's within a shouting distance to them, and they just keep going down the field. Smart quarterbacks, less talented quarterbacks that don't have all those physical gifts, they rely on that stuff, where Dak Prescott might have a little more talent physically, but he is prone to the mistake. So let's hope that Dak Prescott is playing in that game and not Cooper Rush. Now, the Cowboys, like I said, do not scare me offensively, but their defense does. If this game was played a month later, I can see the Rams pulling something. I can see the offense making some hay, but we're going to have to see where this offensive line is and everything right now with this Cowboy defense. And so right now it's hard for me to give the Rams the win in Texas at the end of October. Again, it's a long season. The first half of the schedule is rough. And so I see the Rams losing in Dallas. Again, if this was played late November, early December, I see maybe a different outcome. Right now, I do not see a great outcome. So I see the Rams falling 3-5 heading up to Green Bay in week 9. And so there we go. And I think that's it. If any other breaking news comes on, we'll be happy to share it. I want to say thank you so much for clicking on and spending time with us. Now I will go back to the trivia question of the day tomorrow, and we'll be back on tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be on Thursday. Just wanted to get this one in because this was cut down day. Thank you so much, Am, for coming on, and whoever else is out there, for your likes, for your thoughts. Please hit subscribe. Please ring the bell. If you could follow us on Spotify, that would be great. And leave comments, share the link as we build our footprint here. Okay, folks, God bless. Thank you so much for clicking on. I'm Joe Tarosian, and this has been RamView.